Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Thursday, August 6th meeting of the Policing and Community Engagement Committee. I'm Vice Mayor Emily Duncan. I'll be your facilitator for this evening's meeting. So I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'd like to just give you a few instructions if you're a member of the public and you want to join us. You can hit the raise your hand feature and we can promote you to a speaker. We've had a couple of issues in our previous meetings where the raise the hand feature did not work. So please use the chat feature and let Emma know that you're having trouble and you want to speak, and we will acknowledge you in that way. You can also share your written comments with us. They'll go to the committee staff, and you can send them to us at communication@unioncity.org, and we will have your comments read during the meeting if we receive them after we've completed our conversation tonight. So this meeting will be streamed live to the City of Union City Facebook page. However, we will not be monitoring or accepting public comments through Facebook on tonight's meeting, so anyone there would have to send us a written comment. So with that, roll call, please. Emma?
Vice Mayor Emily Duncan.
Here.
Councilmember Pat Gakoskos.
Here.
Commissioner Melissa Schwen-Mallory.
Here.
Commissioner Michelle Williams-Smith. I think you're muted, Michelle.
Sorry, here.
And Commissioner Jonathan Petty.
Here.
Great, thank you. So the next item on our agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone in the public who would like to give us information or feedback or just share with us some thoughts about tonight's meeting. This would be the opportunity for you to use that raise the hand feature that we talked about, or if you're having trouble there, don't hesitate to send us a chat. Are there any hands raised, Emma?
Does not look like it right now.
Okay, just so that you know, in the public, there will be a second opportunity for a public comment after we've had our listening sessions later on tonight. So,
Emily, so it looks like we got a chat, and I think Avity has identified the problem. The raise hand feature and ability to join the meeting as a presenter seem to be limited to the Blue Jeans app. Browser users, so if you open it on your browser, you can view and chat, but you can't raise your hand. So if you want to use the raise hand feature, you'll have to download the Blue Jeans app. Thank you, Avity. I had no idea. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
So then for tonight's meeting, if someone wants to make a comment, they'll need to send us a chat. Is that what we're learning real time here? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so we'll monitor the chat feature. So let us know if you're there and you want to make a comment. All right. Our next item on the agenda is open business. This is an opportunity for us to share with you feedback that we have received since the last meeting. Any written comments that we received, we will have read into the record. And I think we have about 4 tonight that we're going to share with you. So Emma, if you would read those comments for us, that'd be great.
So the first comment was submitted July 30th, right before last week's meeting. I am unable to attend tonight's meeting. I do, however, want to make sure that within the conversations that will be held tonight, that there be an awareness of the importance of police in our city. They ensure that the population as a whole is safe. They allow for us to know that the worst offenders will hopefully not be hurting people in their own homes or in our community. Adding training and adding social services to a police force may be beneficial as a prevention method. Obviously, the more that our police force understands the population that they are working with and how to decrease the chances of escalating a situation, the better. This is safer for the officers and the individuals that they come into contact with. Ensuring that they have the financial support, parentheses, providing enough officers to complete the necessary duties in a healthy and less stressful
Emma has frozen on us.
them to a breaking point is not the answer.
Okay.
And the next, I'm glad I was able to attend this meeting after missing the last.
Emma, we're not hearing you. Are you having some technical difficulties?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, but we lost you there for a minute.
Okay, where did you lose me?
I think you were about to complete your first comment.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll try to move to a better place in my house with better internet connection. So you said you heard the first comment?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the next one, I'm glad I was able to attend this meeting after missing the last two due to other commitments. I found Lieutenant Mendez's account of the police department's many past beneficial programs particularly interesting. It sounds like these programs did a lot of good for the community, and I agree that there should be funding dedicated specifically to programs like those, whether through the police department or not. All speakers mentioned racial sensitivity and implicit bias training, which I agree is very important. I would also like to emphasize the importance of de-escalation training. My most memorable interaction with the police in Union City was when I witnessed two officers who had responded to a call about a man shouting and possibly drunk outside a restaurant. All the situation really required was for someone to firmly but not non-threateningly walk the man away from the scene. Instead, the two officers stood imposingly in such a way as to prevent the man from leaving the scene and questioned him in such a way as to escalate rather than de-escalate his belligerence. They likely would have continued to the point of arresting him if I had not stepped in and offered to walk him home. I believe this stems from a widespread police culture of, quote, busting bad guys, unquote, and making a peace requires the okay. And the next comment, I'm glad this committee was formed. There needs to be work in the community with police department and city council and staff. I feel like
Emma, you're going in and out. We're losing you. We're not hearing your comments at all now.
And Vice Mayor Duncan, this is Lauren. What we can do is maybe we can just, if you're okay with it, we can push the written comments to the end of the meeting, and I can read them.
Okay, I think we heard the first one, so if you can take the remaining comments and we will have them after we have our listening session, that would be quite helpful. Emma's having some trouble with her internet tonight, sounds like. Okay?
yeah, sorry. I'm sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. This technology challenges us all. All right, with that, we're going to move to our listening session tonight. We have two speakers joining us, and we'll have a little flexibility in the time, so thank you to both of you for joining us. Our first speaker this evening is pastor with the Living Stones Church, Pastor Brian Hugh. Emma, I see he's here as an attendee. Would you like to promote him as a speaker?
Yes, Brian, I just sent you an invite. Should pop up on your screen.
Hi, can you guys still hear me?
Ryan, are you? Hey,
And,
Ryan.
and we see you. Welcome very much. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, everyone. I'm appreciative you guys formed this committee and listening to community, and one of the reasons why I love living in Union City. So let me introduce myself a little bit. I've been a resident of Union City for 15 years, but I have cousins, aunties, uncles, grandparents that lived here for decades. I'm born and raised on the other in Fremont, so you'll have to forgive me. Yeah, I'm a pastor here at Living Stones Christian Church in Union City. Our church also partners with Ceros Elementary. We've done that for a number of years now. I've also been a neighborhood watch captain for 15 years. I have 3 kids who last year were at 3 different Union City schools, gratefully. Now they were compressed, so now it's just 2 schools. And for the last 7 years, I trained at a martial arts school here in Union City. So my almost every waking and sleeping breath is spent here in Union City. So I love the city. But I do represent a very wide spectrum of Union City. People in Dakota side and also on the Alvarado side of Union City. I'm part of communities where people frequently call the police because of suspicious persons, but also people who find themselves frequently called on because they look suspicious. People who wish the police would do something about the growing homeless community here in Union City, but also people who are friends with our neighbors who are living on the streets. So you'll have to forgive me if some of what I share today seems a little bit all over the map. So first, I do want to acknowledge, though, that in the communities that I'm part of, we have an overwhelmingly positive experience. There are some who have basically no contact with police, but most people feel very positively. And I know that many police officers right now, including some of my friends, morale is very, very low. And I just want to, if there are any police officers listening now, I just want to thank you for your service. I know that every day you go out, you're risking your life and your family's well-being, and I just want to thank you for your service. I want to let you know that. But we do have some concerns in the communities that I'm part of, and these have to do with the police, but also really our community as a whole. So really, I think one of the ways I'll kind of frame it is, there's this debate right now about whether or not we should defund the police, which I think is a misnomer. As that phrase was very alarming to me too. But as I learned more about it, I realized for a lot of people, it's more about reallocation of funds rather than defunding. But also, sadly, I think after COVID, we will have found that what will have defunded the police is not social justice, but just economic devastation on the road. But the people I represent, I think I find really 2 themes that, and they kind of go hand in hand with respect to policing. One is a desire to reallocate funds towards non-police-based interventions and programs. But then, on the other hand, also increase funding to hire more and better trained police. And so I know that these 2 streams don't fit neatly along partisan lines, but that's one of the things I love about, having to actually deal with the consequences of your views, is that you're not trying to score political points. You're just trying to wake up each day and live in the community that you're a part of. So the first thing that comes up for me is, as a neighborhood watch captain, I was sad to discover that we no longer have as strong of a community policing program as we once did, like 15 years ago. I remember having cops inside my home. I remember having neighborhood watch meetings with the cops in my neighborhood. They were well attended, and actually those meetings became the basis by which I was able to create community within my own neighborhood. Picnics, barbecues, street parties, and whatnot. And so I deeply regret that we've lost that, if that's my understanding. And I would love to see that come back. Right now, it seems like my primary contact now is no longer a police officer, but someone that just kind of works in the office, who's great, by the way. I don't need that, disrespect there. But I think on top of that, I would love to see just a growing sense of community policing in the structure of our police department, but not only in the structure, but also in the culture. I know, and this is where I will admit, I'm not going to speak sometimes as knowledgeable, but I know that in some communities, police departments preach community policing, but in practice, officers oftentimes are more enthusiastic about, serving a SWAT than they are in actually, driving and walking around in their in some Bay Area cities, again, they preach community policing, but you look at most of the top brass, they're mostly people with SWAT experience. And SWAT, we need SWAT, but a lot of times I know that can have a cultural effect in how you interact with, see, and relate to the community. So I would love to see bringing back of community policing in structure and police officers, but also kind of growing that as part of the culture, the relationship between the police department and our youth city community. We would actually, many people in the communities I'm a part of would actually love to see more police officers in the city. I know that we've been impacted due to various economic concerns. But many people actually feel that they would love to see more police presence, not just when things go wrong, but just, more connection, more, it would help build that relationship, but also help some communities feel safer. I've heard some people also share that they would love to see more police outreach. And we deeply appreciate, coffee with cops, and town hall meetings, but these sorts of outreach are very much, cops saying, come to us. And generally speaking, people don't want to go to the cops. And that doesn't help build bridges. And I think if there could be more outreach where it's cops coming to where people are, and not only when things go wrong, but genuinely to build bridges. And so there's one person in a group in Dakota who shared about when he was growing up, I think it was through Youth and Family Services, they would do street outreaches. And there would be people who actually would meet with gang members. Again, not only when crime was happening, not only when suspicious activities going on, but generally to get to know and build those bridges, because they knew that as long as there was only an adversarial relationship, the ability to address crime in the neighborhood was going to be severely thwarted. And as a minister, this is something that we do. If I just built a church and just opened a sign and said, come, no one's going to come. I need to walk those streets. I need to knock on doors. I need to meet people where they're at. I need to build bridges into the community, not just expect people to come to me because I said I'm open for business. And so I think more of that would be deeply appreciated. And actually, a number of our adults have said that they would love to see more outreach specifically to youth. I've heard this shared before, so that youth can see that cops can be fellow community members, can be heroes, partners in the community, and not just reflective of what we see in the media, not only as people to be scared of, but really part of the same community. That said, we do still hope that even though we would love to see more police officers, we want to make sure that we still only hire quality people. And I've actually talked to other police leadership outside of Union City. But, one, I heard last time, 2 weeks ago, that police pay in Union City is the lowest in Alameda. I don't know if that's true. If that is true, that's very lamentable. And especially since we're not competing only with other police departments, we're competing with industry, and competing with other Bay Area companies for quality people. But also, I've talked to other leaders, and one of the problems I know is just finding quality people and making sure that when people talk about bad cops, obviously no one wants to have a bad cop, but sometimes there's people that just don't meet the standard, whether you call them bad or not. And we want to make sure that those people just don't make it out of the probationary period. I manage people. Some of you guys probably manage people. Once someone makes it through the probationary period, it's very difficult to discipline or fire people that, again, they're not bad, but maybe they don't meet the standards, the culture that we are trying to promote as a Union City Police Department. And so if we would love to see us hire more people, but also a truly stringent probationary period where there is accountability early on. We would rather catch that early on you shouldn't have to kill someone to get fined. That's, we want to get them so much earlier when the stakes are so much lower. Related to that is we would love to see more training for police officers. It should be a no-brainer. Everyone should be for more training. We are very glad that California has the highest trained police officers in the nation, and so we're grateful for that. But I've heard, I don't know what's true here in Union City, but I know in some Bay Area cities, police officers are trained once every 3 to 4 weeks in de-escalation training, use of force training, things like that. I myself do martial arts. If all I did was just take a year of martial arts and then never trained again, you should never expect me to make much use of that martial art. I have to constantly refresh my skills, and not just once a year, not just one, And so I don't know what our police officers get, but I think it would be a gift to our police officers if they are trained in ways so that they can de-escalate, but also maybe to handle violent situations in a way that everyone walks away less harmed. Speaking of training, I think part of the problem is, and I think this is not unique to Union City at all, but part of this poorly phrased defund the police is that I think most of us agree police officers are simply asked to do too much. They're asked to do too many things. Their list of responsibilities is too long. So I'm a small church pastor, and so I have to wear many, many hats. Sometimes I have to be teacher, other times therapist, sometimes real estate agent. Now I have to be a COVID expert, a YouTube star. It's just too many things for one person to handle. And so when I think of all the things that the police officers have to do, it just doesn't seem reasonable, to put all that burden on such a force. And so we would love to actually see more funding go to not only the police, but actually to other parts of the community that might be able to handle some of those responsibilities. Are there other professionals that can handle some of these things? So I'll give you a personal anecdote. It's funny because I know I'm on Facebook Live now, but I had an angry neighbor who called the cops on me 3 times for construction. 3 times the cops came out. 3 times the cops said, "I hear no construction noise." The 3rd time the cops said, "Sir, what's going on here?" I gave him the story, and after that, they never came again, and the neighbor never called again. I thought that was a tremendous waste of the cops' time, and I read on their face, and they were professionals. They were absolute professionals. But you could just see, they're like, "We just got called here 3 times in 2 weeks. Please tell us what's going on." Because they knew that was not the best use of their time. Could there have been a non-sworn officer used to answer that call? I know right now there's probably more people calling in complaints about people not, wearing masks or social distancing, maybe traffic enforcement. I have to admit, I'm not well versed enough to know all that the police officers do, but I'm certain there are many time-consuming things that our police officers do that frankly do not require sworn officers to do, that could be done maybe more cheaply for the city and allow our already too small police force to focus on what they're actually good at and what they are trained to do. And so are there ways that we can fund other programs so that there's less, and then the other thing is, can we also fund other programs that can to make sure that there's less criminal activity in the first place? Many people are asking for more youth programs. Again, I know this comes down to funding, so I don't want to seem like I'm naive here, but this is just what people are asking for. But more youth programs. Our hope is that it will eventually mean less police officers are needed. Maybe it will help interrupt the school to prison pipeline. Some people say, some of the bike programs, some of the athletic programs were very helpful. But maybe right now, in this pandemic, many small local businesses, like I train at a local martial arts school, maybe there can be partnerships with the city so that we could offer more youth programs so that kids have something productive to do, something that gives them meaning to their day, so that they are less likely to get caught up in, when you're bored, you're just going to get caught up in the wrong thing. Sadly, recently, our church, we partnered with Cyril's Elementary, and I found out that last year that they had to cut their school outreach facilitator position. And that person is dedicated to helping to make sure kids don't, to make sure kids still attend school, to make sure non-English speaking families are connected to the school, to make sure kids get the support that they need. Basically, an on-site social service worker. I call her the on-site pastor. And unfortunately, without that position, I am afraid that it will, in years down the road, will mean more business for the police, which not even the police want, And so the more that we can fund productive ways to engage our youth, I think everyone will be better off. I just want to add two additional appeals. One is with relate to the police. One is I would like to ask if our police force could have maybe a little more compassion on our neighbors who are living on the streets. We understand, obviously, we have laws, other places that you're not supposed to camp out, sleep, and park. And actually, what we're hearing from many of our homeless friends is that they usually feel treated with compassion and respect by many people. So I don't want to paint with one broad brush. However, we've heard from some share that sometimes they'll get kicked out of their places, just 5 minutes notice, sometimes in a harsh and brutal way. We've heard from other homeless friends that who only live in their cars. They'll get their cars towed or impounded. And you can understand how devastating that can be for someone who's already homeless and on the edge of having to live dangerously on the streets. No one really, and so to be in this vulnerable position, to lose your possessions immediately, to get kicked out, or to lose your car. And I just ask this because, our homeless population will only continue to grow in the midst of this pandemic. That's an economic fact, and it's already been true. And we understand many times, many people are breaking the laws or camping out, parking where they're not supposed to be, and that's another discussion. But we also know officers have a tremendous amount of discretion. And we would, and it's unlikely that a homeless person will be able to share in this committee. And so I would just like to use my voice, empowered to ask for maybe more fair warning before they're kicked out, and maybe just compassion. I know the law allows for the strict enforcement, but someone who now has to live on the streets because they lost their car, I just don't see how that's a benefit to our greater society. And then the second is, I remember I was at a part of another call with the police chief, and the police chief, and I've heard just only great things about him. But one of the things he was talking about, and I think this was specifically with respect to their relationship with Dakota. And one thing he had asked was, is it possible for us to move on from the past, and not be held, not for the past things to be held against us so that we can move forward. And I spoke to someone who's African American, grew up here in Dakota during the height of the Black Latino dynamic, and he also personally felt that there was probably less noble people on the police force during that time. Maybe some people were complicit in some of the gang activity. But this person is now a strong Christian family man. He's getting ready to send his kids off to middle school. Great guy. And he actually genuinely feels that Union City is a truly better and safer place than the Union City they grew up in years back. He's optimistic about the city. He's optimistic about the police force. But he has a couple things that he feels some reservation about. Yes, he says he would like to move forward, but he would like to ask the police officers and the city not just gloss over the past. We understand that our current administration had nothing to do with that era of our city's history. But this person asks that we just acknowledge it, because the shadow and the trauma of those days still hangs very heavy over many people's lives, especially in the lives of people who live in Dakota. And so just the other day, for example, he and his family, and he still lives in Dakota, was walking around his own neighborhood at night, 8:30 at night, and a police officer pulls up in their car next to him and asks if he's lost. And, you have to imagine in our current racial climate, plus the shadow of the old days of Dakota and our nation's racial history, you can imagine how he wanted to give that officer the benefit of the doubt for why he was stopped, to ask why he was lost. But he was confused about how to truly interpret officers' actions. And so, in the Christian story, we believe in forgiveness, we believe in reconciliation, but we also believe that before that can happen, there must be honest acknowledgement and somehow making wrongs right. And I genuinely believe our current police chief and our previous police chief as well wants to make things right. I truly believe that. But I think I was moved by the call to at least acknowledge the past, acknowledge that it's there. We can't just erase it. The last thing I would just like to say is, I've mostly been talking about the police, but I recognize that our community, our city, must also take ownership of whatever issues, inequities, problems that are present in policing, because the police are us. The police are part of us. The police are answering our calls. And I remember hearing, I'm trying to remember if it was a police officer who shared a couple weeks ago, but if a police officer comes out to only people of certain races or certain economic backgrounds, a good number of times it's because they're being called upon by residents of our city because those people are being deemed. In many ways, the police are just a reflection of this community. So as a pastor, as a neighborhood watch captain, as a father, I take that responsibility very seriously. I vow to do my part to on this side of the relationship, and I want to ask my fellow neighbors and my fellow community leaders to do the same too. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much. I haven't been able to see your face. I don't know if the other committee members can see you, but your voice was so strong and everything you said touched us. And we've heard many of those themes before. So thank you so much for coming and sharing them, and know that we will include them in our comments and feedback to the City Council. Thank you so much, Pastor Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, did anybody on the committee, were you able to see him? Are we having technical problems? Let's see. I wasn't able to see him, so now, okay, hopefully our next speaker will be able to bring him on in a way that will allow us to see him. Emma, could you bring Justin on? Justin Noyd is a police officer with the Union City Police Department, and we'll look forward to hearing his comments.
I sent you an invite, so look out for that. Up, here he is. Justin, are you there?
I saw that he was promoted, but I don't see his face.
Yeah, same.
Can we hear you, Justin? Are you there? We're having all kinds of technical problems tonight.
Yeah. He's here.
Okay. Hey, everybody, this is Lauren. I'm just doing a little troubleshooting. He's at the police department. He's just having some technical difficulties on his end. So please just give us a moment.
Okay, thank you. So Lauren, can you give us an update?
update as of yet. Why don't, Emma, I know that you were preparing to possibly read the written comments from earlier. So why don't I continue to work with Justin and we'll give you an update once we have one.
And I'm in better internet now if you want me to read the written comment.
I think that would be good. We can hear those while we're waiting to get Justin on the line. Thank you, Emma. I think we lost her. We're not having any success here tonight. Emma, are you still there?
No.
Okay.
This is just
Maybe.
a bad night for technology. I'm so sorry, you guys. Can you hear me a little bit better now?
We can.
Okay. Please jump in and stop me if you can't, and I'll just have Lauren read it later. So I'll start with the second comment. I'm glad I was able to attend this meeting after missing the last two due to other commitments. I found Lieutenant Mendez's account of the police department's many past beneficial programs particularly interesting. It sounds like these programs did a lot of good for the community, and I agree that there should be funding dedicated specifically to programs like those, whether through the police department or not. All speakers mentioned racial sensitivity and implicit bias training, which I agree is very important. I would also like to emphasize the importance of de-escalation training. My most memorable interaction with the police in Union City was when I witnessed two officers who had responded to a call about a man shouting and possibly drunk outside a restaurant. All the situation really required was for someone to firmly but non-threateningly walk the man away from the scene. Instead, the two officers stood imposingly in such a way as to prevent the man from leaving the scene and questioned him in such a way as to escalate rather than de-escalate his belligerence. They likely would have continued to the point of arresting him if I had not stepped in and offered to walk him home. I believe this stems from a widespread police culture of, quote, busting bad guys, unquote, and making arrests rather than truly keeping the peace. Truly keeping the peace requires the ability and willingness to de-escalate situations. And the next comment. I'm glad this committee was formed. There needs to be more work in the community with police department and city council and staff. I feel like everyone's divided on race in this country, which include Union City. Reform needs to start not only with police department, but also City Hall. We need to also educate our young people in our New Haven school district and have more open communication with the Board of Education on ways and programs that affect people of color in our city. There's so much bullying going on in schools, and many kids are targeted, not just Black children. I was victim of bullying growing up in our schools, and as an adult Black male, I struggle with depression. Union City needs to take lead in the Bay Area and show we are different. Union City officials, including members of both City Council and the school district, need to get along and work together to get this achieved. We have potential, let's use it for good, and let's change the way of culture here in Union City. And the last comment. Here is an article that thoroughly explains the essential grievances of those calling for change in policing and summarizes some potential ways to address these problems. It also includes links to other sources and resources, including academic journal articles and reports on how various cities are addressing their police problems. And then the link is posted. I hope that you can take the time to read this article. And that is it for written comment.
Okay, so those comments will be posted on the website, and the link will be there so that we can read the article that was attached to the comment also. Is that correct?
Yes, it's already on the website.
Okay, very good. So how are we doing with getting Justin up? Are we having any success? I saw that he had to leave the meeting. Did he need to leave to sign back in, or what's his status?
I don't see him in the attendee
Okay,
list.
okay. All right, so at this time, I think we're going to move to committee comments. This would be a good time for us to hear from the committee of things that you've been thinking and thinking about since we last gathered here together. I just wanted to make a few comments before you got started. One of the things we talked about last week was that we were going to, at our next meeting, have our Union City police chief join us. We have a conversation scheduled with our police chief. He will be our only speaker. And what I'd like to ask and invite each of you to do, if you have specific questions or topics that you'd like the police chief to address, if you could send those to me or to Lauren, we will make sure that he gets them ahead of time and he's prepared to address any concerns that you may have. So that'll be at our meeting on the 13th. The other thing I wanted to remind you is that after the police chief will be taking a break and we won't have a meeting until our work session on the 27th, which means this will be the opportunity for you to begin to summarize your thoughts and your recommendations and send those to me and the staff so that we can put them all together and bring them back to you on the 27th so that you can take a look at the summary of recommendations from the committee, and we'll have a working session to finalize those here at the meeting. So with that, I think we have our speaker joining us.
How about now?
I can hear you, but I can't see you. Let's see. Speak again, Justin. We can hear your voice.
Okay, I'm going to get off, Justin.
Okay. So no video?
We have no video, but we have your voice. Can you open up your video so that we can see you?
I'm trying.
Okay.
Personal phone.
We had to have him download the app on his phone, and so we're just trying a different method.
Okay. Well, if we have to, we will listen to your voice. We wanted to see your face, but we're happy to have you join us, Justin. Can you talk with us? Nope, I think we've lost his voice now.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and check in on the back end, everybody.
How about now?
Okay. We can even see you now, Justin. Welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me.
We can hear you and we can see you. The floor is yours.
Okay. So first off, just want to introduce myself. My name is Justin Noyd, police officer here currently with Union City PD. A little bit of background about me. I grew up here in the East Bay. I've been at Union City PD since July of 2014. I started my career here as a traffic cadet. Shortly after that, I went to the ACSO Academy, graduated from the Academy in June of 2016. And since completing the FTO program in October 2016, I've been assigned to patrol. I hold a few collateral assignments and have had the pleasure of being involved in various projects and activities here with UCPD. I have many reasons why I decided I wanted to be a police officer. I feel the most relevant to this conversation were some of my contacts with police prior that weren't always the most positive or favorable. The contacts as a whole, some of them made me distrust and build a little bit of resentment toward police initially, until I was able to reason with myself and reflect upon other positive contacts I had with police officers, and then understand that it wasn't all officers that were the reason that I felt the way that I did, but the individuals. So part of my conclusion was from confusion, frustration, or shame as well were things that contributed to my decision. I wholeheartedly agree that racism exists. Nobody can deny that. However, in my contacts with police officers, I never felt that I was racially profiled. I was not discriminated against. I was, however, at times inconvenienced, educated, lectured by police officers. and eventually sent on my way. And I feel a significant reason for that was because I cooperated with them. I understood that there is a proper way to address issues and that the problem at hand at the time could be my lack of reasoning or understanding all facts of the incident. Sometimes the resolution was simply I needed to accept accountability for my actions as well. Some of my contacts upset me because I would not want someone who made me feel the way that I was made to feel by some police officers, to be the person who responded to help one of my friends or loved ones on what could be one of the worst days of their lives. So I made that decision that I wanted to be a police officer and work to make people feel respected and cared for if I was hired. I was told that the board might want to hear my perspective as a new officer with fresh eyes, given this current climate, as well as a person of color. I can't honestly give you anything but a perspective as a newer officer and one working within this community for the past 6 years, because I've been treated with the same respect as everyone here within our department. The police department as an agency is staffed with intelligent, ethical people who are fair, impartial, empathetic, and very respectful toward other people. It was for those reasons and the sense of family that I found when I first came on as a cadet that I was drawn to apply with this agency as a police officer. The only time I see any difference is when people on the street decide to make race an issue for various reasons, some of which I don't understand. Often, I found that many are not Union City residents, but visitors to our city. I've heard multiple comments. I've been called a sellout, Uncle Tom, and been referred to as being blue and not black anymore. And I've also heard insults shouted at my colleagues, sometimes in particular white officers, and frequent false accusations of racial profiling, which I feel are a distraction or a scapegoat. For an example, one night I stopped a car for a vehicle code infraction. I suspected the driver was impaired and subsequently requested he participate in field sobriety tests. In his reasoning for refusal were accusations that my partner, who happened to be white, had racially profiled him as a person of color. For those reasons, he felt that the stop was unlawful and expressed that he felt unsafe participating in field sobriety tests. I'll agree that enforcement actions are not perfect and can often be emotionally charged, but this incident demonstrates not all issues we see today lie within police culture or systemic racism. Sometimes a look in the mirror is needed, and people need to be accountable for their actions. This has, and I'm sure will continue to be, a hurdle that officers will work through for some time to come. I've never firsthand seen an officer from our police department express prejudice toward any ethnic group, either prior to becoming a police officer or since becoming a police officer. This department has done a great job providing training on topics such as implicit bias, tactical communication, and de-escalation, which I feel help to diffuse situations such as the one I just described. The training provides officers tools and resources to calmly mitigate conflicts out in the field. I feel that our agency accurately represents the demographic of our community, with the exception that there are not very many women assigned to our patrol teams or leadership positions, and I think this is primarily attributed to recent retirements. I feel that members of our department work to understand the unique dynamics of our community, which is why I feel comfortable saying, for the most part, we have a pretty good relationship with our community, but I do understand there's always room for improvement. Officers are encouraged by the agency to remain involved through special events, such as National Night Out, our semi-annual COPS projects, and overall treating everybody that we contact with respect. I feel that disbanding the COPS unit and removing the SRO from the schools was hurtful to community relations, and I sincerely hope that these positions are reinstated in the future. This is not to say that our officers are not still invested in making this community a better place to live and work, but the COPS unit was able to dedicate more time towards specific problems in a neighborhood, such as blight, CPTED projects, which are crime prevention through environmental design, as well as attend neighborhood watch meetings, all while being uninterrupted by patrol calls for service, as well as plan special events. The SROs are important because they help young people build relationships early on with police. Students who see an officer regularly have the opportunity to engage the officer, ask questions, and also bring problems to their attention directly. I feel that having a DARE officer and SRO at schools is important to help bridge the gap between youth and police officers. And then on the topic of bridging gaps, the hate crime incident that occurred a few months back was brought to my attention as well. In this incident, a car was vandalized, which had a Black Lives Matter poster in the window. And overall, I feel that it was very tragic to see someone targeted for expressing their opinion or support for a cause. I sincerely empathize with the victim, as did members of the department. One motivation I had for helping the vehicle owner clean his car was to set an example. It is, in my opinion, everyone's job to come together and lend a hand during a crisis such as that one. One local news network published a story after this incident occurred, and in the story they interviewed a neighbor of the victim, and in the video clip the person interviewed was depicted toward the end of his interview stating that he believed I should have been out doing my actual job afterward and not clean the car. He was also depicted saying that, well, I hate the argument that not all cops are bad cops. They may not be bad humans, but all cops are bad. And they ended his statement by saying it was a testament to the conflict between the police and the Black community. So my response to that, and I believe others would agree in the police department, is that from the 9 principles of policing, we know that police are the public and the public are the police. The police being only full-time members of the public who are paid to give full-time attention to duties which are incumbent on every citizen in the interest of community welfare and existence. I've heard many times from people that it's what they signed up for, and I couldn't agree more. As a member of the community, I feel that it was my duty to set an example and help that victim clean his car. And I feel that officers of the agency are proud to be members of the community, which is why they work as hard as they do to improve the quality of life in our city. As for the later part, I'm curious as to why he felt that way. Even more importantly, what else might have been said but redacted from the story. Read a book by Brooke Gladstone called The Influencing Machine, and in that story she said, what if they, meaning our media choices, are shortening our attention spans, exciting our lusts, eroding our values, or hobbling our judgments? And I feel that it was important to bring that up because I feel that a lot of people are misinformed about what's going on in their own community. I think that they see the news and group all police officers into one bunch. And I was careful to use the word depicted because we don't know what else that person who was interviewed said. Maybe he meant that I should have been out looking for suspects instead of cleaning the car. I really don't know. Regardless, I just want to sincerely caution people to not necessarily believe everything that's presented to them without fact-checking first. And as an officer, my perspective was widely, immensely expanded as to the complexities of police work. But overall, I feel that our department is very transparent and progressive, and we are very proud of this. For example, every officer in our agency wore a body-worn camera quite some time before other agencies in the area began to follow suit. Our policies and procedures are posted online. Prior to shelter in place, we allowed citizen ride-alongs. I had several people ride along with me when that was available. We had events such as Coffee with Cops, where we were available to talk and answer questions in a pretty neutral setting. And I would say that we're still available. It would just have to be within our new social distancing guidelines. So with all that in mind, I just want to encourage the community to keep asking questions, researching, making suggestions, and stay involved but in a productive manner. your police department, us, we are very willing to accept different opinions and be accountable. Officers are still coming to work every day. We're still doing the right thing and trying to ensure your quality of life, but we're also human. We're human and we're hurting, and we understand the problems and the injustices, and we work hard to be an example to make sure these things don't happen here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
So thank you for sharing with us. That was truly from the heart. And for those of you that remember the situation he was describing, there was a community member that had a Black Lives Matter sign in their car, and someone took it was a white car, and they took black paint and scribbled terrible graffiti on the car. And Justin happened to be the police officer that was called out to the incident and was involved in helping to clean the car and help that situation turn into a positive rather than a negative. I could see that was a very emotional conversation for him, but I'm so glad that he joined us. He's a new police officer, less than 5 years, I think he said. So he brought some new eyes, some fresh perspective, and I wanted the committee to have that opportunity to hear from one of the newer police officers on the team. So thank you so much, Justin, for joining us. We felt your concern and appreciated your sharing that with us. So we were about to go to committee comments when we ran into our technical difficulties, so we're a little off of our agenda. So let me just take us back here to committee comments now that we've had the opportunity to hear from both of our speakers, and I've had the opportunity to kind of lay out for you what's coming next and what we should expect next week. This would be a great opportunity to hear from you and answer any questions you may have or hear any thoughts or comments you may have about tonight's speakers. So Pat, how about I start with you tonight?
I'll start with my comment with Officer Justin Noyd. And I agree with you, Emily. That was a very important or, a very personal issue or comment that he's experiencing as a new officer, and I really admire the perspective and personal comments that he made, and among them are his the latest experience of helping cleaning up the car but he got a negative comment from someone, which is uncalled for. And he also gave us some internal doings, what they're doing inside the police department, that they are transparent, they listen to each other. There's no, even if he's being black, there's no racism that existed in the police department. And also he said about again, he mentioned, and I've been hearing this several times in some of the speakers, about the presence, the COPS program, that it's one of the best ones that the police department should have had. And he also mentioned about there's a diversity in the police department, but I think he wishes that there are more female police officers. And there's some programs that I am familiar also, the SROs and their program. And okay. And he has a very good relationship with the community, and he wants it continued. And about the the first speaker, Reverend Brian Huey, who had a lot of. He mentioned several of them, and one of them again is the cops, and then more outreach to the community, especially to our youth. That I like what he said about hiring good cops, and before they pass probationary period, I think they should really check on that cop, and then there should be more training, and there should be defunding. He does not approve of the defunding, but he suggested about reallocating funds, increase funding, but reallocating funds to other programs so the police officers would not do all the things that could have been done by some other people in if there's program. But I think we also mentioned about youth outreach, and I seems that he's referring to our youth and family services. So, and the last thing is he mentioned about offering his help along with his fellow pastors and also the neighbors. So it was, they were very good speakers again. As usual, every week I hear a lot of some personal and a lot of suggestions to this committee. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa, would you care to share some comments or thoughts?
Yes, thank you. First, I really want to thank you, Justin, for coming to speak to us today. Your testimony was very poignant and emotional. I'm very grateful for your service. I remember that hate crime, and it really impacting me. You know, I have a Black Lives Matter sign in my car too, and I just thought about how horrible that was. And I remember hearing about the officer that helped that person to clean their car and thinking, you know, if every officer was like this, you know, we'd have a much better, you know, community relationship with police. And so to get to hear from you, who is that officer who joined the force to be a good influence on policing and to be, you know, one of the good cops on the force, it's you know, it's an honor to hear from you. And I agree with you that we need more women and diversity and officers on patrol and in police department leadership. I agree that, you know, we need to invest more in these sort of community programs like COPS. And also, I wanted to thank Brian, you know, for your multifaceted service to our community. It seems like you have involvement with very many different sects of our community, and so I really liked hearing, you know, the perspective kind of from both sides from you. And you know, I agree. We need more youth outreach services like YFS and more police training, and just to make sure that we're investing in our community programs. What you said was to prevent crimes from happening in the first place. And I completely agree with you on that. And I really like that feedback that we're getting, that we need to invest back in our communities so that we don't rely on the police for things that they shouldn't be doing or, you know, aren't necessarily trained for. So, so thank you both. I'm really looking forward to hearing from Chief Renetti next week. I'm hoping that we can get some answers on a lot of the questions the community has been asking and that have come up in our sessions, and to make sure that we're addressing all of these issues that are coming up in our listening sessions, and getting information on how the police department is handling those issues.
Okay, thank you so much. So Jonathan, would you care to make your comments now?
Yeah, yes, of course. I think Pat and Melissa have both shared quite a bit of very good information, leaving not much more to cover. But what I would add to that is when I think about what Brian had to say to us. Some other things that stood out to me, as well as the other things that have been mentioned, are his notes about our need for reconciliation and accountability, and that these things are police issues, government issues, and community issues. I mean, this is a holistic issue, that it's not just one part of society that needs to be fixed, or it needs to look within itself for change and for building bridges. And I can see his point there. You can only build a bridge if the other side is willing to accept it. So it is a group effort for us to find how to build those bridges between all the different parts of our community. And for Justin, I appreciate his personal accounts. I think maybe the story at the end, which was very emotional and very important, also might have detracted from something that I felt was just as important that he mentioned in the beginning, which is why he became a police officer. His interactions with police, his accountability to himself, and his desire to do something good, become a police officer. And I wholeheartedly agree with him. Police officers are humans. They are people like us. That's all.
Thank you, Jonathan. Michelle.
Good evening. I would like to just give thanks to the community, especially community and the speakers, for being patient with us, especially tonight with some of the technical difficulties we had, including me. I'm glad that the community, as well as our speakers, are sharing, especially expressing some of their heartfelt thoughts and giving us their time. We're hearing a lot of recommendations and questions and thoughts. So I thank them for sending their comments. And as I said, the speakers giving presentation, they're sharing their time to give their presentations. One of the things that, because it was, everyone has given a lot of their information, as we just said. One of the things that I will touch on is I think I've heard both speakers this evening touch on about us getting more involved in the school district, and hoping that both, not only the community, but also the council and the city getting together and trying to do, and also the police officers trying to get back into doing certain things with the school district. So I heard that from both of our speakers this evening. And I think that's something maybe I didn't hear too much from the community and from some of our other speakers. So I think that's something new that was commented on.
So thank you all for your comments. I just wanted to say that all of the comments that have been shared with us, or questions that have been shared with us from the community about the police organization, have been shared with the police chief. All of the questions that have come from our speakers have been shared with the police chief. So we fully expect that when he comes to be with us next week, that he has a sense of what the concern is in the community, what the community would like to hear more about, how are we doing in certain areas. And I would encourage each of you, if you have some questions or comments that have come up in the last couple of meetings that you would like to make sure he speaks to, don't hesitate to send those to me and we'll get those to the chief. He is our only speaker, so he'll have plenty of time to be in this conversation, to talk with us about his organization, his vision, and to answer any and all questions that you may have. So at this time, we're at public comment again. And I know the first time around we had a few technical difficulties. I don't know whether or not we've fixed them, but I believe that our hands up button isn't working. So if we have any members of the public that would like to make a comment, this would be the time to do that. and you can send us a chat and we can acknowledge you in that way and promote you to a speaker. So Emma, do you have any speakers in queue?
We do not have any speakers or any chats.
Okay. Very good. Then we're moving right through our agenda here. We're down at the good of the order. If there are any topics that you haven't yet had an opportunity to speak to, this would be the time. Since you just made your comments, if there's anyone that wants to make a comment, how about a hands up and we'll acknowledge you. If not, we'll move through the agenda. Looks like everybody's exhausted their thoughts here. Okay, so before we wrap up, let me just once again remind you that our meeting next week will be a conversation with our police chief, Benetti. So for the public, please join us. And if the public has thoughts or questions that they'd like the police chief to address, this is an opportunity for you to send us an email at our communications@unioncity.org, and we'll make sure that the police chief gets your comments and concerns and is prepared to speak to them. We won't meet on the 20th. That will be a working session where we will receive, hopefully from this committee, all of your recommendations, and we will be able to put them all together for you. So we're asking that you submit them to us by the 18th of August. And what we will do is synthesize, summarize, and put them together, bring them back on the 27th for a working session with the committee for you to see what we've heard from the community, what we've heard from you, and we will massage that information and begin to put together an infrastructure for a recommendation for the City Council. So before we wrap up, I just want to take this opportunity once again to thank both of our speakers for joining us and sharing with us their thoughts and concerns. It really brought to life for us what people are saying and feeling in the community, and it gave us an opportunity to also see the human side of policing. And I just want to again express thanks for Justin's willingness to come and share with us what it's like to be a police officer in Union City, particularly a Black police officer. So thank you, Justin, for being with us. And if there aren't any other questions or comments, I think we've made it through our agenda. And thank you all for being here and for sharing and being engaged. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.